Namandam, 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 namandam. Good morning. Please join me in Gassho as I read the words of Shinran Shonin from the Kyogyo Shinsho, Chapter 3. Great love and great compassion are called Buddha nature. Why? Because great love and great compassion always accompany the Bodhisattva, just as shadows accompany things. All sentient beings will, without fail, realize great love and great compassion. Therefore it is taught, all sentient beings are possessed of Buddha nature. Great love and compassion are Buddha nature. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Good morning, and it's wonderful to be here in the temple this morning. We're coming live from the Hondo, and we're looking forward to the day when we can all be here together in person to share the Dharma. And so I can see many of you on the screen right now. There's a big screen here, and I can see a lot of your faces. And so it's really nice to be here. I can sense your presence. I can sense that you're here. And in the same way, I'd like to think that we can sense that the Buddha is here also. Now, when we start our chanting, usually on Sunday services, we start off with Sanbujo, where we invite the Buddha into the dojo, right? And then we spread flowers of welcome. But when we do that, sometimes I can't help but think that, why are we inviting the Buddha into this dojo? Because the Buddha is already here, right? And so I'd like to think that maybe when we do that, we're preparing ourselves to be in the Buddha's presence. Because I believe that the Buddha is here. I also believe that the Dharma and bodhicitta, Buddha nature, are also here in the Hondo. So when I walked into the temple this morning, it felt, I seemed to feel the presence of the Buddha and the Dharma and Buddha nature just in walking through the hallways, walking through the rooms. And our founder Shinran alluded to this in the notes on the Essentials of Faith Alone. He writes, Buddha nature is none other than Tathagata. The Tathagata pervades the countless worlds. It fills the hearts and minds of the ocean of all beings. Thus, plants, trees, and land all attain Buddhahood. And so I read this as Shinran is saying that, yeah, Buddha nature is everywhere. And that's what it felt like when I got here today, is that Buddha nature is here. Now, of course, maybe that's just my mind playing tricks on me, right? But I still believe that the presence of Buddha nature is here in the building. So we might all have different interpretations of what Buddha nature is. And there are some who will say that, well, as foolish beings, we cannot have Buddha nature, right? And there are others who will say that Buddha nature is really just a seed within us. And yet others will say that Buddha nature is a potential. Okay, I like the way that Taitetsu Uno, Dr. Taitetsu Uno, writes about Buddha nature in his book. And that book is River of Fire, River of Water. He writes, contained within each of us is a matrix, or womb, that has the potential of giving birth to Tathagata. At the same time, each of us is contained within the matrix or the womb of Tathagata. In Pure Land vocabulary, each of us is contained within the great compassion of the Buddha Amida, and when this compassion is awakened in us, Buddha nature becomes a reality. So I like how he describes Buddha nature. He's describing it as a process of compassion unfolding within us. So we could probably go on and on about what Buddha nature is, but let's not get caught and stuck in our heads. However we might understand Buddha nature, I believe that it's here and we can sense it each in our own ways. So maybe it's an intuition, maybe it's a thought, maybe it is that maybe we can sense it in the smile of a stranger walking down the street, Or maybe when we're hiking in the woods, maybe we can sense Buddha nature in the wind blowing through the trees. And even if we go on a trip to another country, we can still experience Buddha nature because it's always there if we listen closely. And so that's what I want to share this morning, is experiencing Buddha nature in another building, in another country. And I'd like to talk about visiting a house in the Netherlands. Holland is one of my favorite countries. We love visiting it. We love meeting with the people. They're so friendly. We love visiting the towns in the countryside. It's very beautiful. We love the canals, and we like the windmills, and of course we love the tulips. But there was one place that really left an impression on me, and that place was the Anne Frank house in Amsterdam. So most people are familiar with the Anne Frank house, or with the Anne Frank story from reading her famous diary. I read the diary in high school, but before we went on this trip, I read it again because I knew we'd be visiting the house. And so this time I read it from a Buddhist perspective. And so when I visited the house, it was kind of like through a Buddhist lens. And I found myself profoundly moved as I walked through those rooms. And I believe that the Dharma was present. I believe Buddha nature was present. I think we find the Dharma in the story of the family hiding from the Nazis. So many of you may have already visited the house, and you might remember that when we arrive, we go up a flight of stairs, then down a hallway, and then at the end of that hallway, there's a door. That door is concealed by a bookcase, a huge bookcase that swung outwards. And so when they were hiding, the door was blocked. But of course, they had it propped open for visitors. When I got to that door, looked inside, I just felt I had an emotional reaction, you might say, because I remembered what happened on the other side of that door. So walking in, you walk in and then you go to the left and go down a little bit, and then you come to a room. It's not really big, but it's the room where the Anne Frank family lived for over 2 years. And in that room, the mother, the father, and Anne Frank's older sister, Margot, that's where they slept. And then to the side of that room, there's another smaller room. And in that room, Anne Frank slept. And she shared that room with an older gentleman by the name of Mr. Dussel. And he was a family friend, but he was someone that was also in hiding from the Nazis. Then when you go upstairs to the second floor, right above that room, there's another room where the Van Dussel family lived. And the mother and father slept in that room. You go into the room next to that. It's a smaller room, and there's a stairway going up to the attic. And underneath that stairway was where Peter, the son, the Van Don's son, he was a teenager, that's where he slept. And the stairway goes up to the attic. But for some reason, they wouldn't let us go into the attic. Maybe they were preserving the building or something, but I was a little disappointed because there was a lot happening up there in the attic. For those of you who read the diary, you might remember that that's where Anne Frank and Peter used to go up. And it sounds like they were necking up there. But anyway, that was part of the visit that we were not allowed to do. So I was a little disappointed, but maybe next time they'll open that up for the public. So in going through these rooms, I felt a profound sense of sadness for what happened to the family and knowing what was going on there. At the same time, I felt a huge amount of respect for the courage that the family had in trying to stay together, and also for the love that they had for each other. And that was what motivated them to stay there for over 2 years, staying very quiet, in hiding. And just thinking about that brought up a great amount of emotion in me. And so it was a visit that I will never forget. So I believe that the Dharma moved through the Anne Frank house. I believe that the Buddha nature is there. I believe that Buddha nature and the Dharma are universal. So it doesn't matter what language, it doesn't matter what country, what culture. what physical space is. We can hear the Dharma through everything. And we can hear the Dharma through the words of Anne Frank. And these words provide a powerful Dharma lesson. So what are these Dharma lessons? First of all, in her diary, Anne Frank shared her feelings of interconnection with what was around her. So she writes in her diary entry of June 14th, 1944, she writes, "It's not imagination on my part when I say that to look up at the sky, the clouds, the moon, and the stars makes me calm and patient. Mother Nature makes me humble and prepared to face every blow bravely." So she's sensing the life force that's moving through nature, and she's wanting to connect with it. She couldn't go to the window very often to look out at the trees and the sky, but she did so whenever she could. And I believe that she's sensing the Buddha nature that Shinran is writing about, the Buddha nature that's in the plants, the land, and the trees. She's feeling that interconnection and the oneness that we're all a part of. So in her entry of May 3rd, 1944, she asked herself, why are people so crazy? They kill each other, they build bombs, they hoard food and create huge surpluses of food in some areas while people are starving to death in others. Why are people doing that? And so she cannot understand this. And of course, her suffering is at the hand of others. She can't understand this, yet she does not become consumed with hatred. And she writes that she's been downcast, but that she'll never despair. So in her diary entry of May 3rd, she writes, "I have been given a lot, a happy nature, a great deal of cheerfulness and strength. Every day I feel that I am developing inwardly, that the liberation is drawing nearer, and how beautiful nature is, how good people are about me, how interesting this adventure is. Why then should I be in despair?" So instead of going to hatred, she is able to experience gratitude and hope. But what's especially moving for me is how she talks about what she thinks of others. And I believe that she perceived Buddha nature in others. She writes in her diary, June 15th, 1944, "That's the difficulty of these times. Ideals, dreams, and cherished hopes rise within us, only to meet the terrible truth and be shattered. It's really a wonder that I haven't dropped my ideals, because they seem so absurd and impossible to carry out. Yet I keep them, because in spite of everything, I still believe that people are really good at heart." So I think this is a profound statement, especially that line, that last line, "In spite of everything, I believe that people are really good at heart." Because she knew that she was in great danger, and she was suffering such extreme dukkha under Nazi occupation, but she was still able to believe that people are good at heart. And I believe she's sensing the Buddha nature that Shinran speaks of. And this can only be love and compassion working deeply within her, the very energies that are at the core of Shin Buddhism. And it reminds me of the words of Shinran, "All sentient beings will, without fail, ultimately realize great love and great compassion." So right after writing about people being good at heart, she writes, "I hear the approaching thunder, which will destroy us too. I can feel the sufferings of millions, and yet, if I look into the heavens, I think that it will all come right, that this cruelty too will end, and that peace and tranquility will return again." So for me, this is Namo Amida Butsu. This is spoken, written originally in another language, through another culture, another religion, another set of circumstances, expressed through the heart of Anne Frank. On August 4th, 1944, just 20 days after this last diary entry, the family was discovered by the Nazis. And so causes and conditions would come together in such a way that she would be sent to a concentration camp where she would die, along with millions of others. But she left the diary, and the Dharma can be heard in the diary. They provide us a Dharma lesson that we don't have to give ourselves over to hate or despair. Compassion, gratitude, and hope can stay alive, whatever our circumstances. Such lessons can be taught by Buddhists, Christians, Muslims, Jews, whatever words make sense to them, because the Dharma is universal. Love and compassion can be found even in the midst of hell. So, before bringing this to a close, I'd like to share another passage written by Taitetsu Uno in his book, River of Fire, River of Water. He's recognizing that all of us have the potential for evil within us. And he writes, "Without awareness of one's own potential for evil, the demonic within remains unrecognized and unchecked. The potential to wreak havoc, whether in personal life or in society, awaits to explode from within us at any time." So, in other words, all of us have the potential for hatred. Dr. Uno continues, he writes, "But once we become fully aware of our darkness, evil will lose its power over us, and the energy that propels it may be transformed into a power for good." In my own personal opinion, Buddha nature makes this possible, and the transformation comes about through the Nembutsu. And this morning we chanted the Shōshinge, and in one of the passages, Shinran writes, "The person burdened with extreme evil should simply say the name. Although I too am within Amida's grasp, passions obstruct my eyes and I cannot see him. Nevertheless, great compassion is untiring and illumines me always." So I think that one of the primary evils that we need to actively address in our world today is hatred. Through living the Nembutsu, we can find the strength to stand up against the hatred that thrives when delusions divide us, and to speak out against violence when it arises, and to work towards supporting the victims of violence and hatred. But it must start within each and every one of us. We must first make sure that it doesn't arise within us. And there are some important questions. Can we engage with the world from the heart? Can we keep the Buddha in mind as we move through the world? Can we remember the Buddha when we respond to the hate we see rising and the hate that is often directed toward us? Can we not remain blind to the potential of Buddha nature? And I think that the words in Anne Frank's diary says yes to all of that. To wrap this up, I wanted to share these memories of visiting the house because Anne Frank has come to serve as a great role model for me, a very important role model. Her voice lives on in the diary, and in it we can find love and compassion coming from the heart in the midst of suffering. As mentioned earlier, the Dharma is universal, pervading all things, and we can hear it, whether we're listening to a Dharma talk, or whether we're doing household chores, whether we're hiking in the woods, or simply reading the words of a young girl trying to survive the Holocaust. As stated by Shinran, the Tathagata pervades the countless worlds. It fills the hearts and minds of the oceans of all beings. So remembering what happened in a house in Amsterdam so many years ago reconnects us to this important truth. Namo Amida Boots. Please join me in Gasho. Great love and great compassion are called Buddha nature. Why? Because great love and compassion always accompany the Bodhisattva, just as shadows accompany things. All sentient beings will without fail ultimately realize great love and great compassion. Therefore it is taught all sentient beings are possessed of Buddha nature. Great love and great compassion are Buddha nature. Namo Amida Boots. Namo Amida Boots. Namo Amida Boots. Namadab, namadab, namadab. Okay. Thank you so much for being here this morning.